Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 28th of May. So as we end the month here, we're still riding high. Of course, we can see the modest increases have been because we've had this steel falling. But of course, the new month will start. New money will fund in right as we're at the peaks. Will it be enough to sustain this continuing? It's been pretty solid from a daily standpoint. We're positive on the shakeout as well, and no positive extremes to speak of. So from that standpoint, yes, it can continue. Different story though when we look at the NQ here with that white riding above magenta. Simple fate of the magenta here at any point is going to trigger a sell signal. And it's interesting enough because if you look at some of the tech stocks, your Apples, Teslas, they all have similar white magenta riding well above them. So, and coming off their lows, looks like as soon as we get any softness, they're going to be revisiting the lows on each of these. So definitely worth paying attention to as we see some of that divergence built into the setups. From a Euro standpoint, let's develop some softness within this reading here. Just you see a white spike above red in order for that to fill back. And of course, we had positive extreme from back here that still would be congruent all the way down at the 120 range, but still moving along. From an intraday standpoint, well, this is actually Bitcoin. We've been talking about this one simply because we had this algo retrace at the 39 range, and I've been talking about how every time it's just gotten above it, keeps dipping back below it, and every test has failed. And so what I mark here is all these spikes of the white MBI, particularly when it gets over that 40 range, and how we look for the zero to be revisited after those setups, and just a matter of looking for particularly the crossover. In this case, white moving above red there. Here it was already above red, and likewise in this scenario here where it crossed over, and that was just above, what was that price, right around 40, 39.6. And so not surprising to see it where it is. So anyone who tells you that you can't project where these things are going doesn't really understand what we're doing as far as algorithms and how they work and their impact. From an intraday standpoint, we had a bunch of positive extremes to start out the day. That made for an easy revisit to the lows there, and it just continued with the white above the magenta. And then every time it starts to peak above that, you have an expectation for the lows. Now, it can take some time. I started marking them here when we would see them develop, and we kept having them. Each peak represented by the white over the magenta, and it's just a matter of waiting for it. And sure enough, by the time the day started, we had those lows. And so that was from the previous day going into today. You can see we're developing a similar situation with the spike, and right now it's potentially over, but each one of these peak moves led to the low, and again, those are the crossover marks with the red dash. And some members have been playing around with strategies on that, and it's very effective. It's something we've been talking about for the last week plus. Likewise with this move, a lot of positive extremes going all the way back down to the 4201. So that's a decent range. That's why I kind of just put this trend line here. We don't know exactly when that's going to take place and whether we'll get a new high out of it first, but it just presents that opportunity. Now, of course, you could take the short-term move and play in between with the understanding, though, that when that selling begins, the expectation is that zero. Now, the question will be whether the zero is rising or, as in this case, where the 0% rose up to where price ended up dipping to. When we find these happen intraday and below the 50%, oftentimes you get a new low set up. So that's worth noting as well. And I'll be sending out the updates for indicator renewals and some of the other work that I've been doing with the dots that I'm adding into. And that's why this looks very different than the 2A pink bar, because as I adjust into those, it changes things, and it's just a matter of working out all of the little details that go in between so that we get a consistency and turnarounds like this where you're going deep and then boom, you get the magenta crossover, and yet it's one of those where it needs to convert that early to that buy setup that we know. So it's just a matter of making those adjustments. And once they're all set, definitely get them added into our setups in the paint bar so that everything blends beautifully with what we know from the readings. Some of the setups get complicated with all the variables, and tying them all in together can be complicated, but needless to say, we're getting there. It's looking good. As always, though, I will update you on any additional setups in that I find on the Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk again later.